morning, guys. So this morning I was reading in Ezra, and there were two really good points that we can take away from this lesson from Ezra 3 and 4. So the king of Persia took over Babylon, right? But God convicted this king, Cyrus, convicted him to rebuild God's temple. So Cyrus got the Jews that were supposed to be building the temple, and he committed them to go and build it, right? And the Jews were happy to build it. They're excited about it, to rebuild it and finish it. And it was taking them a very long time. So 2 kings had passed, but they had some enemies that came up to them and they wanted to help build, actually. But the people who were building the temple, God sanctified them to do those works, right? Not anybody could just go and partake in the building of God's temple. So they told them, no, you can't do it. We're building this, not you. And so they decided to give a bad report to the king. And the king at that time was Artaxerxes, and he told the king, hey, you better stop these people from building, because they're gonna use these walls as a fortress and rebel against you and mutiny and not pay taxes to you. And they told the king, just go back into the history reports and you're gonna see that they've destroyed other kings in the past. And he went and looked it up, and he found that it was true. And so he gave those enemies of the Jews permission to go and stop them by force. And so they did. But there were prophets of God, and they charged the Jews to continue. God gave a message to his people to continue to build the temple, despite what the king said. And that's one of the main lessons in these chapters, is that sometimes obedience to God is rebellion to man. And so whatever men's laws go against the word of God or his convictions on your heart, then our duty is to rebel against man in order to obey God. And moving forward, there was a governor that saw that they were building, the governor of Persia. And he's like, what are you guys doing building here? Who gave you the authority? Where are your credentials to be building this? And that's what we hear a lot today. People calling out messengers of God saying, oh, where's your theology degree? Oh, who gave you authority to talk on this subject? Oh, you don't know enough. Without even knowing the person. And I've gotten these charges as well on the internet. And you know what God's people replied to the governor? He said, we are servants of God, of the one who created the heavens and the earth. That is where our authority comes from. It doesn't come from a man-made piece of paper degree. It doesn't come from a university. It doesn't come from the government. It comes from God himself. And when people tell me, hey, where do you get your theology degree? Why do you think that you can talk on these subjects? It's because God has given me the message, and he's convicted my heart. And that's where my authority comes from. And that's what Jesus and the disciples said too to the rabbis. And so if you're a messenger of God and you keep getting these people that are telling you, oh, you don't know enough, blah, blah, on these subjects. And it is our duty to be very studious of the Word so that we can know what we're talking about. We shouldn't, in the New Testament it tells us to show ourselves approved by being a diligent student of the Word. So yeah, I think you need to have a thorough knowledge of what you're talking about. But I don't believe that we need a paper. I don't believe that we need to have the credentials of a pastor in order to preach the Word of God and to preach with authority. God is our authority, and God gives the credentials. So those are the takeaways, guys, is that sometimes if the government's telling you to disobey God, you obey God. And if you're trying to preach God's message and you're met with, oh, we're your man-made credentials, God, who created the heaven and earth, gave me the credentials. God bless.